I want to talk about something that's been grinding my gears lately. I keep seeing these podcasts, particularly I just got done watching Diary of a CEO this morning, and they keep using claims of science to justify weakness. And I'm not talking about legitimate research. I'm talking about cherry-picked studies, pop psychology being used to rationalize behavior that our grandparents would have called what is a lack of self-control. I've been living in disciplined environments for over 2 decades, military first, now running this academy with my friends. I've got a degree from Alaska Pacific University in outdoor studies. So when I hear people misuse science to justify indulgence, it kind of hits me a little differently because I know what real research looks like. Here's what I'm seeing everywhere right now. Someone goes on a podcast, maybe it's Diary of a CEO, maybe it's some other fancy one, whatever you like to watch, and they throw around terms like evolutionary psychology. They use their degrees and their backgrounds to back them up. And they use this to supposedly explain why humans shouldn't be monogamous and that we should follow our impulses. And here's the thing that drives me crazy. They usually take like a cherry picked or limited study with a small sample size and they extrapolate it into some sweeping claim about human nature. That's not science, that's agenda driven storytelling. I remember sitting in bio class at APU with my professor, and she was one of the world's top neuroscientists, like I said. And you know what she taught us? That real science is careful, real science is humble, and real science says here's what we found in these specific situations, in these specific parameters, and here's the limitations. And this is what we can conclude from that. But that doesn't make for good podcast content. That doesn't make for good TikTok shows. And it definitely doesn't prove you should do what feels good. Let me tell you something about these human nature and pop psychology experts that they like to conveniently ignore. We're the only species on the planet that acts against our immediate impulses for long-term benefit. That's not a bug, that's a superpower. When I'm rolling on a mats and someone's got me in a bad spot, my immediate impulse might be to panic, to muscle my way out of it, to abandon technique. But discipline says that we should trust our training and the choice in that moment. If we override our impulses, that we would get the end result that we really want. But somehow, when it comes to relationships, we're supposed to believe that we're just sophisticated chimps who can't help ourselves. I've been married for 21 years. 21 years. And let me be clear, that's not because my wife and I never had challenges. We never had to work through difficult seasons. It's because we both understand that commitment means something. Every single day, I make choices, but I don't act on every impulse. When some driver cuts me off in traffic and I feel that, surge of anger, the primal response that said, I'm going to teach this guy, I don't act on it, not because I can't. I'm a trained fighter. I've been to combat. I have both the ability and in that moment, I have the emotional impulse to, do something out of character. Why don't I do it? Because I've trained self-control. That's what people don't understand about discipline. It's a literal muscle. It's a mind-body connection of building neural pathways on what to do and what not to do. And every time you choose to wake up early, or every time you choose to sleep in or eat an unhealthy meal instead of junk food, or every time you show up to training when you'd rather sit on the couch, you're building or atrophying that muscle. Here's where monogamy comes in. For a lot of people, monogamy is the first major long-term exercise in delayed gratification they've ever attempted. It's where you start to train that muscle of choosing long-term meaning over short-term pleasure. I mean, I mentored thousands of people through my military career and here at the academy. Men, couple of women, and people going through combat deployments, personal struggles, the grind, the hardship of learning Jiu-Jitsu. And what I've seen, the people who persevere through that, who build that inner character, they do the best in life. Because when people don't want to do the hard work and discipline, they just get creative ways to justify their actions or inactions. I called it the rationalization game. And it works like this. First, you do what you want to do, and then you find an expert or a study or a philosophy or a movement or a religion that justifies your actions. Oh, you cheated on your spouse? Well, humans aren't meant to be monogamous. Evolution. I can't stick to a diet. Well, restriction is toxic. Self-love. Don't fat shame me. Look, I'm not saying there's never a time to make these big changes in your life. And I'm not saying that every rule is sacred and finite, but what I am saying is that if your decision-making process starts with, what do I want to do, and end with, here's an expert who says it's okay, then you're probably not making principled choices. You're just finding intellectual cover for your impulse. Sorry, I'm ranting here. And here's what really kind of gets me fired up, though. These rationalizations from these scientists are being packaged as empowerment, as liberation, as self-actualization. But that's not what I see when I look at these outcomes. What I see are people who are less capable. They're less capable of delayed gratification, less capable to build something meaningful over time, less resilient when life gets hard. That's not empowerment. That's the opposite. That's social conditioning and social weakness. You don't know what empowerment looks like? It's that student has been coming to class getting smashed in for years, getting tapped every single session, and then they don't quit. They keep coming, right? It's choosing to honor the commitments when honoring them is hard. And I mean, if you got children, you really need to listen to this and not be listening to these weirdos. I've got 2 kids, and both of them are in committed monogamous relationships. They're 20 and 19. And I can tell you exactly why that happened. It didn't happen by accident. From the time they were young, we taught them what your word means and that it means something, that for the most part, that's all you got. That when you make a commitment, you have to honor it. Not because it's easy, but because that builds character, and it is a muscle that must be practiced. We taught them the difference between wanting something and needing something, between a feeling and a fact, and we're still teaching, and we're all still learning together, right? But everywhere I look, I see parents who are terrified of their kids experiencing any discomfort, any frustration, any kind of delay between wanting something and getting it. They're giving them their iPads, they're giving them their cell phones, right? They're giving them candy and sugar every morning. The TikTokification of everything is upon us, with their food, their life, now relationships. And then they're wondering why people, and I see it, then people are wondering why anxiety and depression is through the roof, why people are feeling lost and hopeless and directionless. You want to know why? Because we've taught them that feelings are facts, that comfort is the goal, that something hard or uncomfortable, it must be wrong. That's not preparing them for life. That's setting them up for failure. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. Building anything worthwhile is hard. And if you never leaned into or learned to push through discomfort, if you never learned to honor your commitments when they're inconvenient and choose long-term meaning over your short-term pleasure, that delayed gratification muscle, you're going to struggle. But if you have learned those things, if you've trained that muscle of self-discipline, then you've got the tools to build a life worth living. Let me tell you a little something about fulfillment, I guess, that I've learned over the past few decades. So you can call it fulfillment. Past 2 decades of marriage, decade of military, over a decade in the military, over 2 decades of Jiu-Jitsu, is that fulfillment doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from becoming someone you respect. It doesn't come from following every impulse. It comes from having those impulses, but choosing not to follow them, choosing your appropriate response to them. It doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from moving through discomfort, leaning into discomfort, and moving towards something meaningful, right? Every single person that I know that has built something lasting, a strong marriage or a successful business or a mastery in any kind of skill, has had to learn the art of saying no. No to immediate gratification, no to the easy options, and no to the path of least resistance. In Jiu-Jitsu, we have a saying you hear often: position before submission. You don't go to the flashy finish until you've done the boring work of getting to the right position. You control your space. You control your breathing. You control your emotions. And then and only then do you really look for your opportunity, and often it's presented to you. Life works the same way. Character before achievement. Discipline before freedom. Service before significance. But that doesn't get in all the books. That doesn't sell books. That doesn't get in the podcast. It doesn't make for viral TikTok content because it requires something our culture has become allergic to: patience. We want the results of discipline without the process of discipline. We want the fulfillment of commitment without the challenges of commitment. We want the strength that comes from overcoming obstacles without having to face the obstacles. That'll be another video for later. And when reality doesn't cooperate with our timeline, we look for experts to tell us that the timeline was wrong, that the obstacles were unnecessary, and that the discipline was actually harmful. And I'm tired of hearing that shit. It's wrong. It's wrong. So this is where we end up. You have to make a choice. You can listen to these voices that tell you your impulses are okay, right? It's that, you made the right choice by doing whatever, insert something you did wrong. And you can believe humans are just sophisticated animals who can't help themselves, right? And some of them are. Some of them are. Don't get me wrong. Also a video for another day. I'm not saying monogamy is simple or that building character is comfortable or delayed gratification feels good in the moment, because it doesn't. That's the point. What I'm saying is that it works. It builds something real. It creates the kind of life that when you look back on it, you can be proud. I'm just saying, don't be fooled by these polished production values and impressive credentials if the message is that you should do whatever feels good and call it empowerment. That's not wisdom, that's marketing. Real empowerment is knowing you have the strength to honor your commitments when honoring them is hard. Real freedom is not being a slave to every impulse you have, right? Real fulfillment is building something bigger than your immediate desires. The choice is yours, but make it with your eyes open. That's all I really wanted to talk to you guys about today. I want to keep it on topic. I don't want to get off topic in these other subjects, but I got some things I want to say about a lot of other things. I see a lot of stuff on the YouTube out there because people have good producers. They got a great story, a great intro, a great hook, and they got some phony credentials to back it up. And then they try to get pseudoscience, like I just watched this morning. And it's persuading everyone on these wrong things. And I see it often. I watch people's lives get destroyed. And they're wasting decades of their lives, right? These moments matter. You need to make them count. I'll see you all in the next one.